4 and almost 5. Yeah, and Sam is 26. Anyhow, they're all. But they live in Utah and
Well, I mean, the weather was gonna be bad. I don't know. If the old folks were.
I know, I'm already starting to some of them because I have a
You guys
lot
going?
of these. Return your diligently. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Are they good with everything?
Yeah, they are.
It's a good drive.
Do I have enough time to get some cheese? Do you have a pen? I didn't check the drawer for.
No, I'm giving that to Ellen. No.
She's gonna see.
What am I supposed to do with these flowers up there?
Oh, that's super nice. You can put them behind you.
I know, but so anyway, you are 4A. Okay. After the approval agenda, then I'll just invite you up. This has got to come over here. Bring it back. We'll get it all figured out here. Well, the cops are here.
Well wishes, that's nice.
Chief is here. Why do I think there's more stuff going on? I better get my glasses out again.
That was left on, that, everyone has one of the DS, I don't know where it came from. That's-
Well,
Somebody's
Yes.
more time.
one more. Yeah, but I got to come back in January. You're stuck with me.
One more full time. One more full time.
10 minutes max. You know, that one would be easy peasy.
Would you like us to order the drink for you to be at, wherever you want to go after that 10
Oh, well,
minutes?
Mr. Bean will be going with me, so,
Okay, well-
you know, we will wave at you as we go out the door
You talk about next month?
in January. Wow, this is... Okay, well, all right. Got everybody here. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Are we ready? Are they for me? They were for you. Oh, oh good grief. He knows us too well. With that, I will call the meeting to order. The clerk will take roll.
All will be noted.
Would you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is approval of the minutes of the November 23rd meeting. Councilmember Edberg, you had corrections?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I just had the clerk distribute at the dais some suggested changes, all on pages 2 and 3, and there's one tiny one on page 5. Looking under 9A, paragraph 2, where it says, but never a vote on whether the city wants the project. I suggest wants is the wrong verb. I would suggest supports or approves of or something else, but my suggestion is supports. Moving down 2 paragraphs, next to the last line, these numbers will help determine whether or not to award $500 million. I'd like to make it clear that it's not the city of White Bear Lake, so to insert either Met Council or the Department of Transportation, whichever you would, whatever folks would. On the next page, paragraph 1, 2, 3, paragraph 5, it's simply to remove, it's Councilmember Walsh believes municipal consent vote to be within the limits, take out shared. And in the next paragraph, the vote was on the amendment, not on the amended resolution. So,
All right. So with those corrections, are there any others? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. Oh, thank you. That's right. You were absent, as was I. Next is the approval of the agenda. Ms. Heinecker, I believe you had something you wanted to move.
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, if we could, under public hearings, you'll note item B is a resolution approving the position and classification plan, and that was an oversight, so if it needs to instead be moved under new business, so that would be 9C. So we'll just put that in a different section of the agenda.
Okay, so noted. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
In favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to visitors and presentations. I keep looking. Did you-
Yeah, well, I guess I'll maybe introduce them because they're really here on behalf of you,
Yeah.
Mayor Emerson. We have both Representatives Wozliak and Fisher here, and they have a proclamation from the Minnesota House of Representatives here in honor of your tenure and your service to the community.
So I'm going to read this House resolution. This is a House resolution congratulating Mayor Joe Emerson of White Bear Lake on her retirement. Whereas Joe Emerson has been the mayor of White Bear Lake for 12 years, serving 3 terms as mayor, and whereas Joe was born in St. Paul into an Army family who moved all over the country during Joe's childhood. In 1988, she finally settled in White Bear Lake with her husband, Sam, and whereas Joe had dreamed of putting down roots in a city with a strong sense of community, and White Bear Lake was the perfect place. Joe quickly became involved with local organizations, joining the White Bear Lake Area Historical Society Board, the City Environmental Advisory Board, and the City Variance Board before moving on to the Planning Commission. And whereas Joe ran for and won the mayor's seat in 2009 at the urging of family and friends who saw her love for White Bear Lake. And whereas Joe was a very involved and hands-on mayor, going above and beyond her official duties to participate in the Citizens Police Academy, ride along with the city street sweepers, take part in fire department training exercises, visit senior centers, and attend numerous events at the local schools, all to better understand and connect with the people who work and live in the community. And whereas during her tenure as mayor, Joe also served as the president of the Minnesota Mayors Association and as president of the League of Minnesota Cities. And whereas, as mayor, Joe prioritized preserving the city's history, supporting education and housing initiatives, improving the city's finances and infrastructure, making the city a more welcoming and inclusive place, as well as championing many municipal environmental initiatives focused on water conservation, reducing the city's environmental footprint, and participating in the Climate Smart Municipalities Initiative, which paired White Bear Lake and Ludenscheid, Germany, to exchange ideas and environmental innovations. And whereas some of Joe's favorite memories as mayor include riding in the La France fire truck at the annual 4th of July parade, laying the ceremonial wreath at the annual Veterans Day event, and helping the city break the Guinness World Record for the largest ice cream sundae. And whereas Joe's tireless work as mayor demonstrates her love for White Bear Lake and her dedication to making the city a welcoming and great place to live. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration of the Minnesota House of Representatives of the state of Minnesota that it commends Mayor Joe Emerson on her outstanding service to the city and extends its best wishes to her in her retirement.
Thank you. That's lovely.
And we have a few other folks who would like to make some comments as well. They're going to come up next.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Mueller. I'm the mayor of Mounds View, Minnesota, and I'm here to speak on behalf of a couple of different organizations. I'm actually going to change things up a little bit, and I'm going to focus on Doug Bean first.
There you go.
Ramsey County Sheriff Bob Fletcher was not able to come this evening. He had, who knows what came up, lots going on in the city, but he wanted me to speak to both Joe and Doug. And Doug, I'm going to start with you. You have dedicated over 25 years of your life to law enforcement. In your desire to serve, you've also served this community and served it very well. I had the pleasure of getting to know you through involvement in Ramsey County League of Local Government, of which you were the president for several terms. And on behalf of that organization and also the Ramsey County Dispatch Policy Committee that will be losing a vital member, we want to say, God bless you and thank you for your service, and remember to keep in touch. Mm-hmm. You're free as a bird now.
Thank you.
Congratulations. A side note on that, the Ramsey County Dispatch Policy Committee was so excited when White Bear Lake joined the dispatch center, the 911 Emergency Communication Center for dispatch of 911 calls. Through working with Doug and Joe, we had an advocate to help us initiate a pilot program where Ramsey County could speak with Anoka County, and Ramsey County will be speaking with Washington County to make sure that they're on the same frequency and have the same opportunity to hear the calls going on, so we know if something horrific is moving from one county into the next. And Doug was instrumental in explaining how vital that program was to someone who was serving and receiving that 911 dispatch call. And personally, I want to thank you, Doug, for that, because you put yourself out there not knowing what kind of support there would be, and I think you found the support to be unanimous. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Joe, you also advocated for the city of White Bear Lake to join the Emergency Communication Center in Ramsey County. God bless you for that. It's made things so much better in expediting sending the 911 calls to the correct agency to get the fastest response possible. So these are things that happen behind the scenes. Thanks to your dedication and involvement. Just a few things I wanted to say. I had the pleasure of meeting Joe at a League of Minnesota training conference. And then I saw her again at a Ramsey County League of Local Government event. And then I saw her again at a League of Minnesota Cities conference. And every time I saw her, she had red on. So I said to her the fourth time I saw her, "Wow, that must be your favorite color." She said, "No." Well, it's my favorite color, and I wear red in honor of you tonight, Joe. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I appreciate so much the wisdom and guidance, mentorship and support that you have not only bestowed upon me with your friendship, but so many other women elected and appointed in city government. So thank you for that. I will vacate the podium now, and I'm inviting Lisa Iverson, the mayor of Wyoming, forward. Lisa has a few things to say.
Good evening, Mayor Emerson and City Council. My name is Lisa Iverson. I'm the mayor of the city of Wyoming. I'm also the president of the Minnesota Mayors Association for this year. I would like to say just congratulations on what a great job you have done for this city. I have followed you for the last 5 years. You are actually the reason why I became ran for the Minnesota Mayors Association. Have enjoyed seeing you at all of the League of Minnesota events, and always would listen to what you had to say, because your leadership and mentorship has been felt around so many different mayors and actually city council members. So with that, I would like to say congratulations. I'll be watching on how this transition happens, because someday I'm going to be right there with you. So I wish you the best. Thank you.
Lisa.
And we'll turn it over.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and the members of the City Council. My name is Desiree Crane. I'm the Secretary of Minnesota Women in City Government. And I wanted to reach out and say thank you, Joe, for all your years of service with Minnesota Women in City Government. I want to run because you're right in the seat. So I'm hoping to run sometime next year and for the city of St. Paul. We'll see if that happens. That's kind of tough. But I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of, and then also I want to say thank you for being a mentor as well.
Thank you so much. How am I supposed to get through this meeting? Hey, we're done. What?
There you go.
What?
Recognizing Madam Mayor, because I'm
No, we can keep going. I mean, there might be a few more people that like me. Who knows?
here. If I could, council, bear with me. So, Madam Mayor, you, most importantly, have been my friend over the 12 years. You've showed my daughters how to lead, not just in a city. You've showed everybody that's touched you that glass ceilings don't exist. Before, that was the trendy thing to say. You are a very, very special person, and it has been my honor and privilege to learn and also be mentored, is a very good word. You are direct but not blunt. You are sweet but not sugary.
Oh, he knows me.
I'm very much so appreciative and say thank you for not only myself, but the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan. Meeting to run, this is not going well. I can't thank you all enough. It's, luckily I still get to stay with women in government because and I can come to the mayor's things too because once you can come again. So I won't lose touch with my friends, which I'm very grateful for. I will miss my friends in the legislature, but I thank them for all the good work they've done and continue to do. And so I will see you around town. So thank you all so much. Now I'd like to switch the tone. Ms. Heinecker, would you join me down front?
If there are tears, we still are very strong.
Well, we have a tradition in the city, and here's the bear. And it's going to be my privilege to give it to my friend and city manager, Ellen Heinecker. It's been a privilege when we sold the council, when we selected you, we knew you would do great things, and you did. And now we look forward to the next chapter in your life and all the excitement it brings. I believe your son and your husband are here. If they'd like to come up while I present the bear to you, we could do that. Step up here a little bit so that everybody's got it. So, yeah. But that, my friend. Thank you. Oh, but just a minute, we're not done.
Oh, okay.
Shelley from Ellers is here, and she has something for you. Oh, how nice. So, wow. Shelley?
Well, we at Ellers also have a tradition when one of our special clients decides to move away. And we do some pretty decent sleuthing sometimes to try and figure out how long you've been employed at a city. Well, it seems like you came and went and came and went and came and went and came and you finally, we couldn't figure out when, but you finally came home in 2006. And you've stayed home in White Bear Lake since then. This time of year is, you think about all the blessings that you have between Thanksgiving and Christmas and the New Year. And I count you as a blessing to have been able to work with you, especially in the last 5 years as you've worked as a city manager. And we've worked on a number of different projects, and we will continue with some of the projects that you've started and bring them to fruition. I so appreciate your professionalism and your compassion, especially through this last 20 months or so in the pandemic, and how you've managed through that. And it's apparent that you love the city and you love the citizens. And I'm going to miss you so much.
Look at that.
We have at Ellers, back in the olden days before data went up, literally, it's now going cloud. When bonds were issued, they were paper bonds, and they had the little coupons on the end, and you had to go turn them in to get your money from your interest. And so this is a facsimile of those old-fashioned bonds. And when our special folks move on, we give them this little commemorative bond. And it is unlimited amount of interest. And it's unlimited distinguished characteristics of quality. And then the registered owner is Ellen, the city manager. And we hereby certify that we are indebted to the registered owner, which is Ellen. Or if you want to transfer it to someone else, you're welcome to. Says right here she can. In recognition of your 15-plus years of service, most recently as a city manager at the city of White Bear Lake, and your dedication to public service. Throughout your public service career, which included 2 periods in the 1990s prior to your final move back in 2006, Ellen has demonstrated a high degree of professionalism, integrity, creativity, humor, and sound judgment. She has served as a role model to countless fellow employees, council members, and other professionals and citizens. We are very happy that she's kept coming home to White Bear Lake and stayed. She truly will be missed. In witness thereof, this departing bond is executed with the signatures of Ellers, and I've signed it, and Stacy signed it. And at the bottom is my favorite part, where it says, Bon voyage. I won't cash it in. So, thank you.
I'm not going to say very
Speech,
much because
speech.
we have a really long meeting ahead of us. But just a couple of quick things. I'll turn to them
You
for a
do
minute, so pardon me. But I just, first of all, wow, thank you.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, look at that. That's amazing. So that made me cry before the meeting started. So I'm not going to say very much. Tremendous staff. So you have a great organization. This is why I'm not doing any parties or anything, because it's just to get too emotional. But so thanks for being here, and thank you for being here. My family, as we all know, they bear witness to our work, right? And it's there were times where they had to bear witness to some tough days. So appreciate all that you've done to support me through the years, and thanks for being here. And staff will be talking more. We have a couple days left still, and you know how I feel, because I hopefully have said it a lot, because that means it's important, right? Everyone, so excuse me for a minute, and then to council. I'm not going to say very much. You know in my heart's where I'm at with all of you and how I've felt about working at the city. Really happy for my next adventure. Very excited. But I will really miss working with all of you. What an amazing council. Your professionalism among your differences that arise naturally, and thank goodness, because who wants a council that all thinks the same? That would not make sense, is just something that I talk about with all the other managers I'm connected with. I've been so proud to work with you, so thank you. But we have a meeting to do yet now, so.
Couldn't we just?
So thank you. Thank you.
Well, I guess we can move on to, well, this is something very near and dear to my heart.
There's a great group up there. Yes.
Do you have?
I will introduce them, and I'm now into business, so, and this is a really fun thing to be able to talk about.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, all our officers in the back. It's wonderful to see you. We are very fortunate to have the best police department in the state. That's along with the best fire department. We just do the best here.
Right,
We just do the best. So thank you all. Appreciate it so much. And you be safe, please. Stay safe out there.
So, Mayor and members of the council, you can see on your screen here we have some members of the Welcoming and Inclusive Community Task Force. So welcome, everyone. They're here tonight. We're just going to say a few short things. We put together a brief memo that I believe the council's had an opportunity to read, but for those of you who are unfamiliar with this task force, the mayor appointed them an 18-member task force back in February of 2021. and really to develop a narrative around a couple questions. And one would be, what does it mean to be a welcoming and inclusive community? And asking the question, do our residents have a sense of belonging? And what is the city's role in all of that to further foster our sense of community that we're all so proud of and we hope to continue, right? The task force has done a lot of work over the past many months, and we still have some work to do. A lot of the research done through conversations with community members, through a community survey, conversations with students, and participation in the community conversations on race. That's a 5-part series. So all of that together that the task force participated in is going to be culminated and synthesized into a report that the council will have an opportunity to review, and then they will be reporting on it in February, on February 8th at the council meeting. So you can look forward to that. Have had an opportunity to talk to the mayor-elect and are also in anticipation of that meeting on the 8th. And what we were hoping to do tonight, namely, the reason we're presenting tonight is just an honor of and to thank Mayor Joe Emerson for setting up this task force and wanting to provide you, Mayor, before you leave, an update on where things are at. You've been participating in all of the meetings, but so then we can kind of have that touch point at end of year, and then there'll be a complete report again, as I said, on February 8th. So tonight's just a few statements from 3 of our task force members who are online. They're going to share, they're waiting for me to share a short video, which we technologically have some issues sharing tonight. So we'll figure it out for the 8th. So we're going to go right to you folks. And there are really a few, not necessarily takeaways, but some thoughts that they have relative to the experience in these past months and things that you can look forward to further conversation about on the 8th. And so I think we're starting with Steve, and then we're going to Ellen and Samantha. So I'm going to let you take it over. Oops, we can't hear you, Steve. Is that us?
He's not muted.
You can hear him? They can all hear you. We're going to give this just a couple seconds to see if it works. Oh, now we can.
Well,
I assume it must be in the council room then.
Yep, that's good. We can hear you now. That's good.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, neighbors who are in council room right now, which I cannot see, but it's a pleasure to be here tonight and speak with you. My name is Stephen Kelly. I have moved here to White Bear Lake in 2014. I live over on the sister streets, actually, towards Birch Lake. And it's been my pleasure to be a part of the Welcome and Inclusive Task Force. I just want to share with you all this evening that I personally believe this task force continues to be timely and that it opens unique channels of communication at a time when our community is undergoing a tremendous amount of change. Indeed, having moved here in 2014, I actually see myself as being reflective of that change. I did not grow up here myself. And new neighbors bring new ways of thinking and doing, and that diversity is a good thing, but how we honor new and traditional customs and perspectives in our community matters. So that is where I think a task force like this really can shine and does shine. I also think that this year the task force has made progress towards understanding how we make everyone feel welcome and included in our community, regardless of how long they have lived, worked, or played here. The task force accomplished this by working to cultivate authentic channels of communication, to connect friends and neighbors in important ways. And this connecting is an invitation to authenticity, to share personal stories about what it means and how it feels to be a neighbor in White Bear Lake. That's important. I believe this very intentional work will ultimately provide, it'll prove beneficial to our city, rather, through time as more of our neighbors feel invited and welcome to participate in civic activities. And efforts like these become increasingly representative of all of us who live here. So I want to now take the opportunity to pass the mic over to my fellow task force member, Ellen Garola. She's going to share an example of how we did connect and continue to connect in different ways in the community. So Ellen, why don't you take it away?
Hi everyone, my name's Ellen Garola. I live by Birch Lake as well, near Stephen, with my spouse Ramon and our 2 sons. I've also been a school teacher for the last 10 years, and there's a tremendous opportunity to strengthen connections with the youth of our community through the schools. They have great energy and fresh ideas. Not only can we learn from youth, but by more intentionally connecting with them, it promotes civic education and involvement. In fostering these connections with our youth, we're teaching them how the city works and introducing them to new channels to go through when wanting to bring positive changes to our community. Providing these opportunities to students who want to be involved not only deepens community connections and builds leadership skills, but it also helps to set up our youth for the future. I'm going to pass it over to Samantha, who's going to share with you another important piece of our work.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha Gunderson, and I was born, raised, and currently reside in White Bear Lake on the south side. I've worked for the school district and for Century College in the past. It's been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve with the Welcoming and Inclusion Task Force, and I really thank you for having us tonight. So the message of our work really closely aligns with a well-spoken message I recently heard at a local school board meeting, which stated the mantra, "Nothing about us without us is for us." Our community members are our consumers, and our work as a task force has really focused on engaging the community as our partners. We've made really strong connections in the community through our work and really gained valuable insights, which will be represented in our report in February. The primary focus on our task force was how we can make our community more welcoming, comfortable, and enjoyable place to live through the voices of our own community members. So White Bear Lake will benefit in sustaining and nurturing the connections we made as a gauge to understand how we're doing and what we could be doing better. There's not really a one-stop answer we found, but rather a continuum to strive to be the best that we can be. So while COVID has really been a challenge, with our community engagement, our work has really helped us lay the groundwork to continue the strong partnerships and create that sense of ownership within the community and utilizing valuable insight to make White Bear Lake a more welcoming place to live. So we have so much more to explore and understand and how an organizational group such as ours can positively impact our policymaking. But with that, we're very excited to continue our work and present our report. So thank you, Madam Mayor, Ellen, and members of the City Council for our opportunity to share our work with you, and we really look forward to sharing this work in February.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Barbara, did you want to say something?
No, she's
No. She's muted. You're muted.
I've been serving as a facilitator and consultant to this process, and it has just been an honor to see the level of commitment and sustainability of this group, and Mayor, of your vision about really, really talking with and listening to the people of White Bear Lake. So I also want to thank you for the opportunity, and I think you'll find that the work of this group will lead you with some fantastic ideas about how to make this a more welcoming community, and all of your residents are looking forward to that.
Thank you all so much. Anything? No. Good night, and I'll look forward to hearing it, even though I won't be up here. I will look forward to it, and the council will take good care of the report, I assume.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is the Wellhead Protection Plan. Mr. Copy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So this Wellhead Protection Plan update is required through Minnesota rules. We're required to do it in 2 parts. The first part is a vulnerability assessment. Basically doing a model. So we hired a consultant, WSP, to do the modeling for this portion of the project. It then goes into a second phase where we actually assess the vulnerability, look at different ways to manage our well area. And before you here is John Oswald. He's with the Minnesota Department of Health, who'll go through a brief presentation. As required through the rules that we need to do a public meeting. We'll actually do a public hearing as part of the second phase of it, where we actually look at strategies to protect our wellheads. So with that, I'm going to advance some slides. And John, you just tell me as we you want me to go. But John Oswald, again, with the Minnesota Department of Health.
Yeah, so I was actually with WSP when this project started, and this was actually the last project I did with WSP before I decided to move to the Department of Health. So, go to the next one. So, wellhead protection plan is basically to prevent contaminants that can adversely affect human health from entering public water supply, and good wellhead protection planning can result in effective protection and prevention. Thanks. The state wellhead protection program actually grew out of the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act of 1986. The Minnesota Department of Health was assigned program authority in 1989. Different states have different agencies that have authority. Some of them have the Department of Natural Resources, some of the Department of Environmental Quality. In Minnesota, it's the Department of Health. And the requirement is that a science-based approach be used to protect drinking water sources, as opposed to what had been done before, which was anywhere from nothing to just simply like drawing a circle around a well on a map. So as Mr. Coppy said, the plan is in two parts. Part one is primarily the what and where, which is essentially looking at where's the water coming from, what materials is it flowing through on the way to the well, and importantly, what materials are present between the aquifer and the surface. Part two is more looking at activities that happen on land surface, things like inventorying the various contaminant sources that are nearby, management practices, how are those contaminant sources stored and managed, and then a contingency in case the water system is compromised. So plan amendments, that's what this is, because the original plan was actually done more than 10 years ago. So this is an amendment which is required every 10 years, which is to basically update the plan and include any changes that would be the location, changing the location of the well, adding new wells, turning old wells off, changing the volumes. If you have, say, new industry that's pumping more water, or maybe industry left, or you have population increasing, or conservation measures that are working, all of that is incorporated into the new plan, as well as any new geologic information, where new wells drilled in the area that give us a better idea of what's going on under the ground. And then any other information that's applicable to the plan. So the objectives of part one, which is what I'm talking about because that's what has been finished, is again, where is the water coming from, what's it flowing through, and what is between the surface and the aquifers of interest. And if you look at this, so we usually use models, so usually a mod flow model. This particular project was using, the base model was the Metro Model 3, which was developed by Barr Engineering for the Met Council about 5 years ago. And you can see here the groundwater flow in this area is generally from the northeast to the southwest towards the Mississippi River. We know that in the area here, it's primarily for the wells, the city wells, it's flowing in the Prairie du Chien and Jordan aquifers. There are extensive areas of clay and shale over those aquifers that provide a good amount of protection. So as you can see in this one, this is the wellhead protection area is the wells. Well, in this particular one, you can see the different colors are 1, 5, and 10-year path lines for a single well or a single model run. But because there's a lot of uncertainty in the various parameters that are used in the model, and it's just a heterogeneous situation in the ground, we use a lot of different models and run a lot of different path lines, so it would get really complicated. So the black line actually encompasses all the path lines for all of the different models that were run, and this essentially provides a safety factor when you're completing the wellhead protection zone. This zone is pretty much the same as the original one from more than 10 years ago. It's slightly rotated to the east but the vast majority of it is exactly the same. So once we have the wellhead protection area delineated, we run a line around it called the DWSMA, the Drinking Water Supply Management Area. And this is essentially because the blue line is kind of amorphous and it cuts through things and you can't really tell where it is all the time. And so the DWSMA boundaries are lined up with the land survey lines and primarily with major roads. So you can basically be able to say this side of the road is in, this side of the road is out. So finally then, the geology of the area within the DWSMA is studied to identify low conductivity, basically to identify what's between the surface and the aquifers of interest. So in this area, there's a lot of clay, a lot of shale, and so you can see the green areas represent areas of low vulnerability. So what the DNR does is it looks at the various amounts of clay and shale between the surface and the aquifers of interest, and the larger the layers are, the higher, they give it an L score rating. So the higher the L score, the lower the vulnerability. So the green areas have a high L score, the yellow areas a moderate L score, and the red area, which is just the one small area, which is considered to have a high vulnerability, primarily because there's a lot of sand and gravel between the aquifer and the surface. This data then is used to go to the Part 2, and then the Part 2 manager will be able to look at this and see what has to happen relative to the contaminants and other activities at the surface relative to what the vulnerability in that area is. So that's all I have. I can answer any questions if there are right now. Otherwise, there's my contact information, and somebody can get in touch with me and ask questions later.
Thank you. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Oswald, so in the report, 4 out of our 5 wells were identified as being vulnerable, yet they are generally in areas where we have enough clay and shale and so forth that protects them. What are we actually looking to do? Or, so it's a wellhead protection. Do we simply rely on what Mother Nature and geologic forces have given us, or is there an active phase of what we do to prevent contamination? I'm going to guess that some of that is just water moving down from the surface down through the profile. What does our active part of protection look like?
It pretty much looks like just keeping track of what's going on in the ground. So we have recommendations in the end of the plan for continuing to sample wells and make sure that you know what's in the aquifer around your wells. They're listed as vulnerable primarily because there was tritium in the water, which is an indication that water is slightly younger. Basically, it's
since the atomic age.
Yes, it's a tracer from the atomic age, but it could be 50 years before that gets to your wells, and so that would be about right for now. And so it doesn't. It's just saying that the water is slightly younger. It's not saying that they're actually vulnerable to anything in the immediate future. They do look at the well construction to make sure that the well casings are tight, so nothing can just go straight down the side of the well and get into the water supply. So there are active measures taken.
So when we've had a fair amount of conversation at this table about the movement of subterranean water. It has something to do with lake levels and a few other things. So the northeast to southwest pattern is not a surprise. Is there any new things that we've discovered in this process and the updating and so forth that sheds any light on either the volume of water, the rate at which it moves northeast to southwest, anything along those lines that might give us insight into how either our wells or somebody else's are influencing that pattern, or what our risks are for upstream contamination or whatever?
No, the other wells, other high-capacity wells were all included in the model, and their pumping rates were updated, so that's all added in. So the path lines in those wells are updated with that information in the model. But otherwise, anything else is beyond the scope of what this needs.
And so the Phase 2 isn't going to shed any additional light on any of those topics? All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maybe for Mr. Coffey, just remind us, we have 5 wells. We're using 1 or 2 of them, or just what are we doing in terms of usage? And then what about testing? Do we crank them up once in a while, the ones we're not using, to make sure they can bring water up still, or how does that work?
Councilmember, or Madam Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, we're currently pumping with 4 wells. 1 is basically mothballed. We have not pumped in it for some time. The 4 of which we do, 2 of them are primary wells that get most of the water. We do, during peak times during the summertime, do use the other 2 wells. So yes, we do keep the 4 primary wells that we use are kept up. They're routinely run. They're tested. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. It's always good to know about our water. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
All right, moving on to item number 5, which is the Truth and Taxation hearing. Did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I do have a presentation. Tonight is the night where we have opportunity for anyone who is present to, when the public hearing is open, to speak to the tax levy and or related budget that the council will be considering for tonight. They did back, it was in September on the 28th, that the City Council did adopt a preliminary tax levy of $8,080,000. And at that time, the council understood that the tax levy could not be raised from that amount, but there would be opportunity to lower that amount if so chosen. We've had discussions with councils since then about different aspects related to the budget, but if we have an opportunity, I don't know, is that PowerPoint, we can turn that on now, and I'll just run through this. I'll try to, many of you on council, all of you on council actually, because we've worked together now for 6 years, have seen some of these slides, but in different formats, but I think it's important for those who are watching to understand our process. So our process for budgeting begins actually in January and February when we start doing our internal review of the capital improvement plan. It says 5 years, but really we're kind of pushing that out to 10 now to correspond with our long-range financial plan. We then, in March, we have a work session with our council, typically in March, but this year it was in March, to review the capital improvement plan that looks at significant purchases, equipment purchases, looks at how we plan out our streets. Significant street or city investments is what would be included in that capital improvement plan. And then what corresponding long-range financial plan that kind of looks out over a 10-year period, what are our upcoming significant investments that we need to make as a community, how will we be paying for them, what do we do this next year to help put us in a position to better level out any tax impact over that time period. So a lot of work goes into that with the council in that first part of the year. Once we get through that process, we then move into more operational budgeting and look at some equipment, but that would be our department budgeting internal process in May and June. And that goes actually through July where departments work on it, and then both the finance department, city manager's office, we look at those budgets that are being proposed and review and go and work through that to make sure that we're doing what's needed, but not doing more than's needed. And then in August, council has an opportunity to review that work at a work session in preparation for their September meeting, when there's additional conversation on the proposed budget and what the corresponding tax levy would need to be in order to support that budget. So that is then adopted by council in September, a preliminary tax levy. In October, the county goes and mails out tax statements, which are mailed to households, that incorporates that tax levy with an estimate based on the estimated market value of that home, giving them what their estimated city tax will be, along with other jurisdictions that they have property taxes for. But tonight, we're here to talk about the city's portion of that tax statement. And then lastly, tonight, we have our Truth in Taxation public hearing, which is an opportunity for people to speak to this if they so choose, and then also in consideration of adopting the budget once that levy is approved. We also do put information on our website and put information in our newsletter as well, so there's other ways that we reach out. But okay, so our next one, I have my, I hope it's not, it's probably kind of hard to see, but what you see there is a graphic that, if I can find my own little cheat sheet, that's a graph that shows our entire budget for the city. So tonight we're talking primarily about the general fund, and all I want to say about that, for purposes of those who are unfamiliar with the city's budget, the city has many funds. We have capital projects fund, that's in bright yellow. That's like our street projects and our equipment, and you can see that's like the biggest portion of our city budget, right? And then we have enterprise funds, that would be like our sewer fund, our water fund. We have, is that the green one, I think says internal service. And we have special revenue funds, like our sports center is a good example of a special revenue fund. And so those are other funds. The general fund, which is what we'll be talking about tonight, really is general government. So it's the fund that would provide funding for our police services, our fire services, our planning and zoning, general government operations. Really is the best way to think about that. And that takes up about 24% of our entire city budget, which is at this point proposed to be $52.9 million. So our budget that's being adopted and considered for adoption by council tonight is the whole budget of $52.9 million. What we're speaking about tonight more specifically, again, is just that 24%, which is the general fund. And the reason that's important for tonight's meeting is because that fund is the one that gets property taxes for support. There's other sources of revenue that go into those other funds, but specifically for property taxes, the general fund is what we would be most interested in focusing on. And the proposed general fund budget for 2022 is about $12.9 million. The next slide then is quickly, you can't see all of it, I just want to say briefly, just by showing you how it's sort of broken up. And you can see that for the general fund, the revenues about, is it, I think it's, and I can't read, is it 55%? 55% of our property taxes, of the revenues that support the general fund come from property taxes. So that's, there's other like charges for service, our business licensing and permits. There's other things that go into supporting our general fund, fees and whatnot. But, a little over half of the revenues that support our general fund do come from property taxes. The next slide then just shows, it's difficult to see, but just how we break up our expenditures. And again, I already mentioned, you can see police is in the orange. That's the orange piece of that pie. That's the most significant portion, proportionate to other things that we provide for in our general fund. And of course, there's obvious reasons why. It's got the most staff in that department, and it's heavy on technology and equipment. And then other divisions are broken down there. I think you have green is our public works department, and then we have general government is in the dark blue, and if I'm seeing correctly, I think fire is in the gray. So that's the frame. Other ones are different parts of our general fund. But that just gives you an idea of what is the general fund and what is it that we're paying for in that fund that we're talking about tonight. So the next slide, then, before I go into the 2022 proposed budget, just briefly, the council always has an opportunity to go back. We do have to make revisions as we move forward through any year. And at the end of 2021, as we're proposing in our revised budget, we do have more revenues than we're budgeted. And it's going to be easier for me to look at my piece of paper here. We have about $358,000 more in revenues than we're budgeted, and that's primarily due to non-business licenses, rental inspections, and an increase more franchise fees than we anticipated. And then lastly, but not as significantly, but we do have some allocation, administrative allocation from some ARPA funds. But so that's helped to bring up our revenues than we had otherwise budgeted for. On the other hand, expenditures, we do also have had, I should say, a reduction in our expenditures as were budgeted for 2022. At this point, at least in time, we're revising the budget to reflect a reduction in expenditures of about $217,000, and due primarily to some staffing turnover, some vacancies that, we do try to fill them. We need everybody, in our staffing, but it just takes time to fill positions. So we also had some trainings that were canceled due to COVID and a reduction in some of our contracted services. And then also a revision of the budget is our transfer from our general fund to our equipment acquisition fund and also to our municipal building fund. $400,000 to equipment, $200,000 to municipal building fund. That is from 2020 revised budget, and then going into 2021, we were finding that we had some extra that we wanted to put into our capital funds to help support those projects. So that's all reflected, and this is all, council is seeing this they've seen this, talked about it, but for those of you that haven't seen this before, that is what we would be proposing in our revised budget. The next slide then is our proposed tax levy summary to support our 2022 proposed budget. So we're looking at a $8,080,000 tax levy for 2022. And that levy increase, there is a levy increase, and that's shown in that slide. We have $63,000 to support our debt service levy, which were for projects that were approved and taken, or we went forward with in 2021. We also are migrating our support for the engineering department operations out of the construction fund gradually. We had a lot of discussion about this with council and staff. We talked about having how do we do that? And then for 2022, we're going to begin doing that by offering $200,000 in levy support for that transition. And then lastly, general fund operations. That's just everything I reviewed a bit earlier. There is an increase in the levy to support increased expenses in general fund operations. The expenditures have gone up more, but we have other revenues to offset them. So the actual levy support for that is $347,000. And then just briefly, in summary, some of the operational expenditures, the increases are a result of reallocation of our fire department formula that council has had a lot of conversation about, and it just means that we're generally shifting some of our reliance between how we rely on revenues for ambulance and fire, simply put, I guess. And then we also are, as we support the fire department staffing model, we're adding 2 additional staff members to our, full-time staff members to our fire department response team. And we have some technology enhancements. And then significantly, and most significantly, would be just because we are a body of people that work for the community, each year we support salary adjustments and benefit adjustments. So that's what is being seen with our increase in our expenditures. The next slide, and I won't go through all of that detail, it's just another way of saying, we have, as I had indicated, we do have increased revenues that we've isolated for our 22 budget over our 21 budget of about $805,000. So about 67% of those revenues do come from the tax levy, but 33%, or about $258,000, come from non-tax revenues, and that would be through business licenses and permits, charges for service, intergovernmental, and then some franchise fees. So there's more listed. I'm not going over all those numbers. And anyone can have access to that at any time. It's just to show you that we have broken out for council in our work session, where are those revenues coming from. And the next slide shows a breakdown of some of the expenditures for 2022. There is an increase in overall expenditures of $813,000, but again, those are offset by an increase in revenues that are non-tax based. And it's important, again, to note that, personnel costs do account for about 80% of our expenditure increases. It's like when you go to the school district and because we're talking within the general fund, that supports our, just our operations primarily, so which is people. And so that is where most of that goes. The next slide does show a breakdown of our personnel expenses, and you can't see all of that on there, but I can tell you that about maybe 20-25% would be for the new positions we have in fire, and also some other staffing changes in a few other departments. The remaining would just be for existing employees and those salary and benefit adjustments that we discussed. This next slide then goes on to the other two categories. In addition to, we have an increase in expenditure in addition to personnel and supplies, a net increase, because we've, every year there may be an increase for some costs. So every year we'll go through and there's some supplies we cut. So we went through cuts, but there's things we had to add, and there was a net increase then of roughly $65,000, including things like equipment repairs for vehicles, streetlight repairs, and some survey equipment for engineering department. That's just to highlight the items that are more significant in terms of our expenditure changes. Other services, there's a net increase of $130,000. Again, there's something we were able to cut, but then we've had to increase some others. And some of them are offset. So those are expenditure increases, but some are offset by revenues. For instance, we're going to be doing more contracting with building and permit plan review assistance, because we have very significant review and inspection work to be done with all of the school district work. And so we're paying more to get that done, but there's revenues that are coming in to help offset that expense. So we're listing it as an expense, but some of these expenses are offset by revenues. It's just how we break it down, and we talk about it when we work through it in council. Boulevard tree removal, that's becoming more significant as we go through the emerald ash borer phenomenon. And then, technology. Each year we have some different technology systems we continue to try to upgrade in our efficiencies internally, and so some of that goes towards technology. So on a more broad level, that was our kind of a budget overview. And then so very generally, but importantly, obviously we're here to talk about how does this levy impact property taxes for our, we talk a lot about residents. Council has information in terms of how it impacts the commercial properties as well. But typically it's the residents that we hear from at these types of meetings, which is why we tend to focus on that for tonight's presentation. But the taxes themselves, they're dependent on two things primarily. Whether or not your taxes go up or down. It's going to be how is your property value responding to the market? Is your property value going up a lot? Has it decreased for whatever reason? So that's going to have an impact on the property tax change in the city portion of your bill, and any portion of your property tax. And then secondly, of course, what we as a city levy broadly, and then and that annual levy as it's relative to the city's entire tax capacity, net tax capacity. So there's a formula that we figure out to arrive to that. But essentially, your property value and then the city's tax rate. Those are the two things you would need to be remembering. So they're calculated on the next slide. Real briefly, this is what we used last year, but we chose the median valued home, which is $260,300. That value is assigned by the county. The taxable market value is in fact $246,500, but that's because there's something called market value exclusion that we're not going to go into tonight. But so it's reduced a bit to the benefit of that property owner. So the taxable value for that property is that $246,500, and then so you have that taxable value, and then you have to identify what that property tax capacity is, and to do that, you multiply your market value by the rate assigned by the state. It's a tax classification rate assigned to residential properties, and that's 1%. So you take that tax capacity, you multiply it by 1%, and you arrive at a taxable value of $2,468. But those aren't your taxes. Your taxes are instead that tax capacity of $2,400 multiplied by the city's tax rate. And then so for this year, that for 2022, that house that's the median valued household then would have a city property tax bill for that year of $547.62. So just walking those through to see how do we get to that dollar value. There's a method to get there. Okay, so the next slide is just an overall view that, kind of where we're at with our market values citywide. They did not go up as much as they did the previous year. I think residential was like 7.8 or 9% last year. So yes, they've increased by 2.4% residential in White Bear, but less than was the case for last year. Apartments went up about 5.2%, commercial only 0.6%, and industrial actually went down by negative 9%. So that's in White Bear. And then we show how that compares to Ramsey County in that chart. So the estimated market values overall in White Bear did go up 2.2%. And that is at a number of $66.8 million. That's overall values and that's important as we calculate our tax rate. The median valued household increased by $4,700, so 1.7%. So just not as much as last year, but it's still going in the right direction. And the next slide then just shows, over the years, we always go back about 10 years. So in 2021, the median market value for homes was $256,000, and again, now in 2022, that $260,300. The taxable value increase was $4,700, and again, it just shows you, again, we arrive back at that tax for that particular home is at $547.62. On to the next one, please. So we picked a few. Every year we have houses that each year we look at the same house to see what's been happening over time, right? So for many, many years, that's been the case. And these, I just selected 3 of I think we have like 8 that we follow for purposes just to demonstrate the impact of our tax levy on the homes that we've selected. I selected one. The first one is the one on Carlisle Court, and that's been selected because there was 0 change in their value from 2021 to 2022, none, 0. So their home, which was valued at $242,700, is going to see a $42.32 increase on their city's taxes. So, and that's a home that had no market value change. But the next one did have a slight increase in its value of $7,300, about a little over 3% change. So there, and that home is about the same value, $245,000. But their taxes will instead go up about $59.14 in that year. So again, their increase over the last home is a function of their market value having gone up for the difference there. And then lastly, a home on Campanero, that went up $20,000, a more significant change, more than the average of 8.5% roughly change. And that home, relatively the same, instead at $256,000, but their taxes will go up about $89.65 for the year. So it shows how that increase in value can really significantly have an impact on really what your taxes will be, and that's a function. So if people have concerns about their market values, that really it's a function of the county. That's not something we're able to help with, but we can certainly connect people with the right folks at the county to review that market value. Okay, so then what we did in the next slide is just we have 4 slides quickly just to break down. All right, so for that median valued home, the homeowner of the $260,000 valued home, what do they pay per month for some of our general services, just to provide some perspective. So importantly, we had this big dump of snow last Friday, right? So for our street sidewalk maintenance and snow removal, it comes out to about $3.65 a month. So it helps put into perspective, like, what am I paying for, when I'm doing this in a year. That's for that very specific service. And then the next one for our police department, which you saw in our general fund, it's a big chunk of our budget, right? But so our residents and our homeowners of that medium value home are paying about $18.25 a month for their police services. The next would be for our fire department. It's $4.11 a month. That does not include, it's very important to understand that it does not include the ambulance, because that's an enterprise fund, so that's for the fire. And the last one would be for our parks department, and that would be for all the beautiful parks and the lights you see at the downtown and all the work they do. That is for $2.74 a month. So then I just have two more quick slides, and I'm not going to give a lot of detail, but it's really important to highlight because a lot of people are hearing about the American Rescue Plan and how does that fit into what we've been discussing with the council about budgeting and our tax levy and operations and how can we be using that. Well, we've had significant conversation with council. We're limited on how that money can be spent. We cannot use it to supplant tax levy. That was clearly articulated. So we can't say, oh, yay, we have $2.7 million, we're going to cut our tax levy by that, and we're good for a year. Unfortunately, that can't be done. But there are really important things that can be done, and revenue replacement was important. We had about $2 million we calculated in lost revenue as a result of the pandemic, really is how we isolated that. So there's certain things that's going to go back into some operations. Some of them are special revenue funds, like that we're helping to make good from the losses, but also some pretty significant equipment that we're able to shift it to. And then you can see water and sewer, they're pretty specific about. I'm not going to go into the details of that. We're happy to go over that with anybody who's interested in how that's being allocated, but the next slide, no one's going to be able to read it. It just shows that there's a one-page document that we've included in the budget document that council received. They reviewed it at the work session. We've had a lot of conversation about how to use this money. We have 3 years to spend it. The column that has the second column from the left, you see a lot of numbers in it. Most of it's being expended in 2022, but you can see we do have expenditures out in 23 and 24. That can be amended, again, in terms of how that's used, but a lot of it we've incorporated in 2022. So that is in the budget. When the council considers the budget for adoption tonight, they will also be adopting that plan. And then lastly, is the recommendations that are being forwarded. There's 5 resolutions for council's consideration. So after the public hearing, we first ask council to consider the tax levy, because the tax levy is what will support the budget. And then we move down through the rest. So Mayor is very familiar with that process. And so that's the end. If there's any questions you have, I don't know if you want to open it up to the public hearing first or
Yeah, why don't we do the public hearing first, and then we'll come back as we discuss the resolutions. I'm sure the questions will come up. So with that, I would open up the Truth and Taxation hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to come up and speak about their property tax, now would be your opportunity. Anybody? Seeing no one coming forward, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Now, council, do you have questions that you would prefer to do per each resolution, or just how do you, what will make it easier for you to make your decisions? You can do it either way, or if you have something that you need to get said right now. Okay.
Well, Madam Mayor, I mean, we've, as the presentation showed, and I know I say this a lot, but we've spent a lot of time on this budget, on those folks at the dais here. So, and frankly, I thought the presentation was really good. I mean, it is your last meeting, though I do have a series of 15 questions about the relationship.
I'm sorry, you'll have to get
the relationship between LGA, the fiscal disparities. You didn't get into fiscal disparities at all, and then the market value exclusion. So, number one, I'm just kidding.
Well, why don't you put them in writing, and we'll see if we can get to them sometime. Well, with that, why don't I just start with the first resolution, which is a resolution adopting the revised 2021 budget and the proposed 2022 budget. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank staff for all the work that they put into this. They make it very easy for us to read, understand, comprehend, follow along. And I believe that our city has done a fantastic job when it comes to, one, getting things done, but getting things done without wasting money. I still go back to the chicken ordinance discussion where we were doing the public hearing about our taxes after the chicken ordinance. The council chambers was packed for people that were for and against chickens. And after that was done, one person was left for the truth and taxation, and that person complained that we didn't do enough. You know, it's. But with that, I would thank you, staff, and I'd like to move approval.
We already have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Oh, that's
Councilman, I still have discussion
That's right.
going. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to put a marker down that when we adopted the preliminary budget, we made a conscious and unanimous decision to begin I'll call it correcting, adjusting the way we have financed the engineering department. We still have work to do on that. We made a $200,000 decision to support those costs, but there's more work to be done. And I applaud management on bringing in and proposing a 2021 revenue budget that ended up being conservative. We ended up with revenues higher than budgeted, and we ended up with expenditures lower than budgeted. Net gain of about $600,000. So when it comes time to have that conversation next year, I just want to remind everybody that we still have this engineering thing that we should continue plugging away at.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to resolution adopting the 2021 tax levy collectible in 2022.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to resolution committing fund balances for specific purposes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to resolution authorizing city contributions towards employee and volunteer recognition programs as presented in the 2021 and 2022 budgets.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, moving on to resolutions authorizing and acknowledging city involvement in promoting business and cultural activities in White Bear Lake as presented in the 2021 and 2022 budget.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And if people think there wasn't much conversation, believe me, over this past year, we've had much conversation on the budget. So this isn't something that we just rubber stamped. We had worked this through quite heavily over time. So once again, finance people, thank you. Staff, department heads, thank you for this. This is a long, tedious process, and you do it so beautifully. So, and you've led this process, so thank you for that. Moving on to general obligation capital improvement bonds. Ms. Kinsvater.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As discussed at previous city council meetings this year, the city plans to issue bonds to finance the public safety facility renovation project. Per Minnesota state statutes, the city must issue capital improvement bonds to fund this type of improvement. There are conditions for how we issue these capital improvement bonds. We must have approval by 3/5 vote of the governing board. The project must be part of a capital improvement plan. The public notice must be provided, and the issue must have a public hearing, and when approved, then would create a 30-day period for a reverse referendum for the public to be able to comment on the project. So tonight, the City Council is hosting the public hearing to receive comments from the public on the project. Once the public hearing is done, the City Council will be asked to approve a resolution adopting the capital improvement plan and providing preliminary approval for the issuance of bonds to finance this project. The resolution for the preliminary approval of the bond issuance sets the maximum amount of bonds that the city would be able to issue for this project. Right now, the amount that is set is $14,315,000. This would be for the project and all of the expenses that come with issuing the bonds. The resolution does not constitute a formal approval of the bonds, so this is just the preliminary approval. The City Council will consider the formal action of the bond issuance once they open the project bids in 2022. So at that time, the city can choose to issue bonds at an amount less than that $14,315,000, but we can't increase the amount to anything more than that figure. So by approving the resolution tonight after the public hearing, that begins the 30-day period in which a petition signed by at least 5% of the voters from the November 21 election can be submitted to the public, to the city clerk. If no petition is received during that time frame, the city may proceed with the project and use the bond financing plan. If a petition is received, the City Council will need to either hold an election on the project, seek alternative financing, or to abandon the project. So staff recommends approval of the resolution following the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Kinswater right now? If not, I will open this up to the public. If there's anyone that wishes to speak on this issue, now would be your opportunity. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Gentlemen, Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Kinswater, we know that the estimated cost of the project is increased. We got that news 2-3 months ago from our architects. Got it? Makes sense. We know that there's cost of issuance, and then in your recommendation this evening, there's an additional, I believe it's 7% as an additional contingency. Do we have reason to believe that that contingency is required, or are you, since we can't increase the value of the bonds later, are we just being prudent in adding additional cushion, or has additional information come forward to us that suggests that we need to plan on additional expenditures with that contingency? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, there hasn't been any increase in any of the costs. That's just a contingency that we've added, knowing where the market has been in the past couple months, to be conservative, since you can't increase the amount of bonds next year once you approve this amount. So you will be able to reduce that amount out if there aren't any cost increases.
And to date, have there been any noticeable, measurable, or notable changes in bond rates in comparable sales of bonds? I mean, theoretically, we're 30 to 60 days out, so that things could change. But based on what we've seen so far, we received some numbers. Do we have any reason to believe that cost of issuance is going to go up? Not cost of issuance, interest on the bonds is going to be going up. What's our sense there?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, I don't believe, that's a great question, and I don't believe that there's going to be an increase, but I'm going to look here to Shelley, who is here from Ellers, just so that she can give us the most current information to answer your question.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, Shelley Eldridge with Ellers and Associates. The bond market, we are not seeing a lot of movement in the bond market. What we have in the document, we do have a 50 basis point or a 0.5% cushion. So if the market goes up a 0.5%, we're still in the ballpark. Not knowing what the Fed is going to do with the interest rates, that was our kind of our best estimate at the point we did the estimates. And again, if we get to a point where the bond market starts becoming volatile, we can do updates on those estimates and provide the city with those estimates, and that can be part of the discussion at the point you receive the bids, whether you decide to go forward with the project or if you decide to postpone it for a time period, or whatever your options would be at that time.
So our city has a really good bond rating, like really, really good. What is the interest rate that we've been projecting at without that half percent cushion?
At the time we ran these, which was, about a month ago, we were looking at a bond rate. I don't know.
And can we put some numerical boundaries on that?
We were looking at an interest rate, and I apologize, I don't have that information.
Okay.
I don't have the exact information on that, but I can certainly.
Carrie, would you happen to know that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, I believe we were looking at about, was it 2.5%?
Yeah, and I believe that was for the 25 years.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anybody else? All right. So we have this project now. Do I have a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving, as you guys all know, this is one of my pet projects. I really, yeah, I'm ready for this one now. Here we go. So, moving on to unfinished business. Resolution reaffirming denial of the Fifth Avenue vacation and vacating 3 portions of the same Fifth Avenue right-of-way. Anybody, do you want to,
I'm sorry.
Hello. One of you, I can try, but you're the legal expert, so I'm going to go with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The council certainly is aware that this came before you a couple meetings ago, a proposed vacation of portions of Fifth Avenue. This is a right-of-way that was dedicated to the city in a plat that was recorded in 1883, so it's been around a little while. And I did some further work. As you know, I responded to one of the concerns expressed by one of the property owners along this road. I'm not going to go through all the detail. I laid that out. It's in the packet. But after spending, frankly, a lot of time on this, and as staff indicated as well, this really was a simple mistake. The City Council was approached in 1977 with 2 petitions to vacate different portions of Fifth Avenue. They went through the process and agreed to vacate a northern portion of it. There's a map in the memo that highlights that. At the same time, there was a petition requesting to vacate the southern half of it as well.
frankly, it comes down to a simple, they recorded the wrong resolution at the county recorder's office. They intended to record the resolution for the northern portion. They accidentally recorded the resolution for the southern portion. And in fact, the resolution recording the southern portion was recorded prior to even the meeting at which they discussed it. Because at the first meeting when it came up, they said, you don't have enough signatures, you need to come back, get more signatures and come back. Well, in between that meeting and the other one, if I recall correctly, it was recorded when they went to record the correct resolution, or when they realized after the denial of the vacation of the southern resolution, they realized the error. The city attorney typed out an affidavit indicating that the council never did act to vacate the southern portion. That was recorded in error, and so that's not to be relied on. So now, as the council knows, there's a development proposed to the west of Fifth Avenue. The proposed access would go across Fifth. The remaining portions of Fifth, just the street ends coming across from a parallel or perpendicular street. Excuse me. Perpendicular street going across Fifth to gain access. Questions have been raised regarding the development itself, density of it, things like that. I haven't been directly involved in those discussions, but have been instead focused on whether or not Fifth Avenue remains a city right-of-way, and through this rather long memo and letter I wrote previously, concluded that yes, in fact, it's my opinion that what I call the southern portion of Fifth Avenue does remain a public right-of-way. And so the proposed vacation that's before you this evening is for all but the street end portions of Fifth Avenue in order to allow access across the streets to the properties to the west. And I had another discussion with the property owner's new attorneys. They have submitted a claim to their title insurer regarding the confusion that has resulted from what they believed was a acquisition of property through the vacation of the southern portion. So they're going to be working through that, and I think that's the right thing to do. As far as questions that have been raised regarding, well, if I look at the county map, it's not on there. If you really go down, you'll see that it's the reason why the Fifth Avenue isn't on there is because, excuse me, is because for some reason the county picked up on what I call the unnumbered resolution that was recorded in error, but somehow skipped over the affidavit that was recorded just a month or two later. And so that appears to have been a mapping error, or at least reflected incorrectly on the map. The point is, none of that conveys title. And so we're back to the city received this in 1880, whatever I said, 83, excuse me. The city has never acted to vacate the southern portion. In my opinion, it remains, and therefore it is appropriately before you this evening to take action to, one, clarify the history of this, and that's what the resolution before you attempts to do, and then also to vacate those in-between portions, the sections between the street ends. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Questions? Councilmember Walsh, this is your ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a question necessarily, but just some comments. I don't agree with the resolution strategy tonight. I'll just say strategy. And it's not because of anything in the resolution. I firmly believe everything we have in the resolution is true. I don't think it's necessary. We're the wording of the resolutions were the city's denial is hereby reaffirmed. We don't often reaffirm things that basically didn't happen in the 70s, and that's what we're being asked to do here. I think your memo is sound, and I think you've answered the questions. There's no dispute. The city never vacated the property. We have access and rights to it. We have utilities there for all the reasons you outlined in your memo. And I'm just worried about the strategy, because we're not compelled to take an action, but we are taking an action tonight. And by taking that action, are we protesting too much? Are we are we saying there wasn't reason for us to act tonight? I don't know that there is. I think your memo is sound, and we should send your memo to the Planning Commission and say, this issue has been resolved. Here's a memo from the city attorney. Proceed with, any developments that may come up. We should send it to Ramsey County and say, get your stuff together and fix your records, and maybe even fire somebody that screwed this up, because it's caused a lot of pain in my ward and in these neighborhoods. But I just don't know that the resolution is necessary. Now, the other part of the vacation we can do later. I think it's worthy. I think, the vacation of the land that abuts property along the way there. It's in practice, they built swing sets on that stuff. They have sheds out there. It's their land. We ought to vacate it, and I'm happy to do that. I want to do that, but I think they're two completely separate issues, and I just don't know that we need to take action tonight to affirm something that is already in place because of your memo. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know how I'm going to vote if there is a motion to do the resolution. That's a different issue now if it's before me whether I vote yes or not. But before we get there, I'm going to argue we move on and we discuss it. But I think the memo is sound, our position is sound and strong, and we don't need to do anything tonight. And I think doing something might be a bad strategy. So,
Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that we have three topics in front of us. One of them clearly not appropriate this evening. The other two embodied within the resolution, but distinct issues. Perhaps they're the same that Mr. Walsh is referring to. I agree with with our attorney's opinion that the southern portion was not vacated back in 1970, whatever that was, 77, and that the Planning Commission has asked for guidance on that question, and I think there is a value to us in giving guidance to the Planning Commission as to the formal legal status of that vacation. Did it happen or did it not? And I think that's so. Perhaps, Mr. Walsh, I'd be inclined to support that portion of the resolution to give clear guidance to the Planning Commission as to whatever was it or was it not. So I'm fine going that part, and I believe that the analysis is correct. But I look at the issue that is not on our table tonight is what development is potentially going to happen on those parcels to the far west. That's a decision to come later, and has not yet been fully debated within the Planning Commission. We don't have their action recommendation. It's not ripe for our discussion tonight. So I'm saying we don't talk about that one. The second one, the second of the three topics that I think merits more discussion than we might be inclined to give it tonight is, why should we vacate the portions that we are, and why should we not vacate the street ends that are being proposed? I don't know that I'm ready to, I don't think that case has been made as to why we should or should not, what our strategy ought to be with regard to, particularly for me, the not vacating the street ends. I look at page 4 of the memo right below the chart, and I'll quote, and by the way, Mr. Gilchrist, a well-written, very clear, nicely laid out, thank you. Therefore, the city has the authority to vacate the southern portion and has the option to retain, not vacate, the street ends as shown on the attached map and as proposed in the vacation resolution. So if we have options, I want to know why, and I really would appreciate a debate as to why we ought to or ought not to take that action tonight. I'm not ready, I'm not there yet, and I haven't seen, we haven't had that discussion, so I'm not inclined to want to act on that part of the resolution tonight. But that's my read.
Can I answer one thing, Madam Mayor?
Sure.
Just because it's you raised the point. The Planning Commission can rely on a memo from the city attorney. That's not unusual, right? I mean, the city attorney serves the Planning Commission as well as the council. So I guess the only thing I'd say to my colleague is we don't need to pass a resolution to communicate with our own planning commission. And I'm just worried that passing the resolution may impact other things that could happen on this matter outside of our chambers. And, I mean, give the memo to the planning commission and say, here you go. And staff can explain, yeah, we think that it's clear. And on the street end issue, I mean, I think, I mean, can ask the staff, but we don't typically vacate the ends of streets. I mean, the famous one I'll talk about is the Whitaker Street end, you know, that borders our ward right there at Dally's. I mean, that we own that street end. We've had a lot of conversation about that street end. I remember learning that, thinking, oh, that's interesting. We own the street end all the way to the lake. Of course we do. And we do that, I think, as a rule, right? I mean, it'd be very unusual for us not to keep control of the end of a street, even as it goes into the lake. So, I mean, you're nodding your head. I mean, if that's the case, then I think that's, again, we didn't do it in 1977, and I don't think we have to do anything to not vacate a street end.
Mr. Gilchrist, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Just a couple of comments. I realized in my obviously not written down presentation on this, to be clear, the vacation of the southern portion did come before the council in 1977. It wasn't as proposed initially when it came before, but it did come back before them, and they specifically acted not to vacate. So there was an affirmative decision not to vacate. So that's one thing. I mean, ultimately, obviously, when it comes to a vacating of any city easement, it's a matter of the city council determining whether or not there's a public interest in retaining the right-of-way. And if you find that there isn't a public interest in it, then that's usually the sorts of discussions that we have, or I should say the council has, in making a determination of, you know, we really don't need this. We don't foresee ever really needing this as part of our system of streets. Therefore, we'll vacate it, clear away our easement, so then the adjacent property gets that land unencumbered by a public easement. The other thing to keep in mind is by statute, it requires and charter, I believe, requires a 4/5 vote of the council to vacate. So it's a high standard. So that public interest needs to be determined by, you know, at least 4 of you to determine that, in fact, that there's no public interest needed to be retained in the right-of-way in order to vacate. Certainly, I'm not here to push. I think clarifying it, I mean, to your point, I mean, I get it. I think that there is some value in clarifying the stance that the city's taking a stand now, trying to clarify this. This is the history we believe is accurate. This is the what we think, what we believe based on information we received and a great deal of review that's gone into the record here, that is the concern. So from a legal perspective, you know, there may be a policy issue that you have in your mind, but I think from a strictly legal position, I'm not overly concerned about that. That's not to say, therefore, you ought to do this, but I think doing this as part of the resolution, clarifying that record and making it clear that, look, this really was not vacated. We're stating that now, and I think that may have actually come through a recommendation from the county at one point, if I remember correctly. Someone had made some reference to. Yeah, they want us to clean up the problem.
Maybe
Maybe
I shouldn't have said that. But I think that's maybe why you see that language in there. So again, this is entirely up to the council, though.
All right. Councilmember Jones, come on and weigh in.
Yeah, I will concur with both Councilmember Walsh and Edberg, which is like weird.
Weird, yeah. Let me write that down. Let's mark that date down.
And, you know, I whiteboarded this at home and had strings and, you know, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And thank you, Mr. Edberg, for breaking down the issue into 3 issues. Really, it is. And so if we want to tackle each one of those separately or, you know, in one conversation with 2 subjects, A, B, yes. But as far as Mr. Walsh's point, I'm not, if you want to put something saying, do I want to vacate this today? Okay, that's a question, right? I mean, that would not to reaffirm. No Vlamo or otherwise slap to you, Mr. Troy, since that was an inside joke. Because it's like, this was super valuable as far as what you did in putting this research and memo together. And I was able to put the strings together to figure it out and go, oh, okay, understand the chain. But yeah, a decision was made. It's been proved that that's made. Yeah, I don't want to do anything. I want to not take action, because I think Mr. Gilchrist's memo has made it very clear that
What our position is.
that the land was not vacated, the southern portion, and if we choose to see a need to do A and B, or B and C of that, sure, another discussion, separated.
Okay. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So from a procedural standpoint, the memos, and I don't know, I actually don't know, but my understanding is that the city initiated the vacation conversation, or at least that's, and so it kind of puts it on management to,
What do you need?
well, what they want, what they need might be two different things.
But let's find out.
But it's like, if we're going to have that, it seems to me that the research should be enough to give the Planning Commission information and guidance for their questions, and they won't be meeting until January 31st, that if there is a specific policy position that staff think the council ought to debate, well, there's 2 meetings in January where the council will meet and could have conversation and take action if it so desires in advance of the Planning Commission. And we may choose not to, and whatever that, I won't predict what that looks like. But I'm just saying, I'm not ready to act tonight, and if I think a proper place to leave this is if the city staff thinks that the council needs to take an action, you should bring that back and be explicit about what's at stake and what are the implications and blah, 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 and then we'll have that policy conversation. That's my sense of where it goes if we take no action tonight.
Okay, so
One more point, Madam Mayor, just to signal my intentions. I don't think we should do it tonight, but I will bring back the vacation of the adjacent landowner pieces, because I think it doesn't have a public purpose
bills.
anymore. It backs up to their properties,
Yeah.
but I don't like doing it together, and I don't like doing it tonight. I
Then
think
we'll table it.
We can. You want a motion to table it?
Yeah.
I'll make that
Let's do
motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to table this resolution. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. What?
So we didn't table to a date certain. Does it just sit until somebody wants to
Yeah.
bring it back? Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor and Council, just to that point, there really isn't, the hearing's been conducted, that's been closed, so there's no need to keep that going. I think tabling is fine. You have a reasonable
Yeah.
period of time in which to bring it back. If you try to bring it back 5 years from now, that's
That might be-
too long.
Yeah, that council might not be too happy. Thank you. Moving on to ordinances. Second reading, a request by Division 21 LLC for a text amendment to sign code section 1202.040 Subdivision 2 to allow billboards. Ms. Kane.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is a request that has been initiated by Division 25 LLC, the developer of the Pillars of White Bear Lake and Lunds and Byerly site on Centerville Road that was previously Mrs. Landy's property, as you may recall. And at the time of acquisition, there was a double north-facing billboard on the property that was subsequently removed after the city's massive sign code overhaul in 2015 following the federal lawsuit on off-site signage in the city. It was pretty much concurrent with the development of the Pillars and the Lunds and Byerlys, and in response to some complaints, actually, of newer residents that had moved into the Pillars. So we are here this evening to conduct the second reading of the proposed text amendment that would allow billboards, including dynamic billboards, as previously provided for in the city's sign code as of 2007. And it's intended and proposed to allow these billboards in commercial, industrial, and public zoning districts. And over the last several months, the Planning Commission has debated back and forth on this. As part of that process, they examined the existing inventory of existing billboards along both 694 and 35E within the city, as well as Highway 61 in the Marina Triangle District, and has also examined regulations of neighboring municipalities of White Bear Township, Vadnais Heights, Matamidi, and Maplewood that also have existing billboards along those corridors. And this chart is intended to, I don't know if it's legible, but really kind of outline the previous 2007 standards, how the initial application was submitted by Division LLC, Division 25 LLC for the current text amendment, and then staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission. And I do want to point out, as highlighted in the text of the document that was attached to staff's cover memo, there have been a couple of revisions since the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation on this. And one is to clarify that the entire length of the supporting poles that are visible would have to be covered with an architectural treatment. I think the discussion, previous language talks about the architectural treatment, but wasn't very specific. It said pole base. And so this just clarifies without question that anything that is visible should be encased. And secondly, you may recall that at the first reading we added the public zoning district so that if in the future the city looks to want to install a similar dynamic display sign on property the city owns, public property, perhaps along 694 as an added revenue source for our park fund, perhaps, just suggesting.
Housing.
We eliminated the maximum number of billboards to a date certain as of 2019, as proposed by Division 25 in response to staff's concern that we didn't have a proliferation of billboards in our community. And so this just allows greater flexibility for this council or future councils.
Keeping up with their parents, in other words.
What?
Certain members of the audience might get that joke.
Sorry.
Too many inside jokes.
Thank you, Bill. Continue. Yeah, I'll continue on here. The Planning Commission did forward a unanimous recommendation at its October 31st meeting. We conducted the first reading on November 9th without much feedback or input or direction. The second reading is tonight. We have published notice in the White Bear Press as well as on the city's website.
Okay.
And in addition to the proposed ordinance that's attached to the memo, I've got some funky lines on here.
That was my fault, I think.
Staff did prepare a summary resolution for your consideration to facilitate the publication of this proposed ordinance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Kane? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
What's the vision? How does this work? So if we approve this, especially for the particular site off of 35 there, the owners of the property then would contract with like a Clear Channel or somebody, and then the Clear Channel would build a structure. That's kind of what the vision would be. It might not be Clear Channel, it might be Upfront or somebody else.
Yep, Madam Mayor, Councilmember
Outfront.
Walsh, that's exactly how it would go. It was, in fact, on this agenda this evening, should this not pass, we would want to revisit 8A3, which is the actual conditional use permit for the V-shaped dynamic display sign that is being proposed. It's my understanding that Division 25 is just securing this conditional use permit and will probably speak with a variety of outdoor display companies to get the best deal. And then we'll submit for a building permit. Staff will review it for consistency.
Well, that's my other question. So must be, pole visible, must be concealed by an approved architectural treatment. So we don't have a lot of specifics on that. I mean, we've got township, township guy here, Bill, but I mean, they did some really nice, those were, I think that my understanding is that the township, I assume, told Clear Channel, I think it's Clear Channel that's done those beautiful structures to put their billboards on. We're not that detailed and we're not that restrictive.
No, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, I believe the difference is that is on township property. So that was through a negotiation as the owner.
Okay.
You know, we certainly could tell Division 25 if we want to be that fancy, but I don't think we need, we've got the most beautiful water tower in the state or the
Yeah,
country right next to it. So we've got our name. Did we win? Kind of,
Yeah, we're all good.
kind of known there. So I don't think it it would- would- Yes, I remember that's on the township But I think for this council or future councils, if we were to put one in Lakewood Hills, yeah, I think I'd want a lot more say on that design and perhaps something that looks like our entry signs or some more,
Oh, yeah.
you know, maybe a big white bear crawling on the side of the pillar. I don't know. Or would you want the bear? Green. A big green bear.
No, right? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm fine with what we're proposing. I just want to know process. Do we adopt the ordinance first and then the resolution?
Then we do
I'm
this.
ready whenever you.
Well, I have to have a public hearing. It's the second reading.
So when you're ready to have a motion, let me know.
Thank you. With that, I will open it up to the public if there's anyone that wishes to speak. Once again, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Councilmember Edberg, you proceeded to make a motion.
I'll move approval of the attached ordinance.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
One rhetorical question. I just remember something about the Lunds Byerly signage being too big or something on that building. Something, I don't know. It seems like a billboard's fine, but man, we made the Lunds Byerly sign any bigger on side facing the freeway.
They didn't want to put in a pylon sign. I recall that being in discussion, so it kind of justified a larger wall sign.
Secondary sign.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right. Anything else? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So do we need to do anything else?
Action on the
Summary resolution.
Summary resolution?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 7B, second reading of an ordinance setting the 2022 fee schedule. Ms. Heinecker.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, I'm not going to go through the memo. I did, I think, fairly thoroughly at our last council meeting. I'll just remind council that while we are establishing fees for 2022 within this ordinance, we make adjustments, in some cases upward, but there's others that we take out or will decrease as appropriate. So this was published, the fact that we're going to be having this public hearing tonight, and people have had access to this if they wanted to review it. So, I mean, with that, if there's any specific questions about the fees as we reviewed at at the first reading, I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Well, once again, this is a public hearing, so if anybody wishes to come up, now's the time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to land use consent. Oh, summary resolution. What?
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, I forgot that. Summary resolution. I need
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to land use, 8A consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, resolution authorizing city manager to execute 2022 contract with Northeast Youth and Family Services. Ms. Heinecker.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, there's actually two service agreements that are referenced in this memorandum. One is for the city's participation with Northeast Youth and Family Services, among other cities in the service area, for its 2022 funding allocation at $52,443. That is a per capita allocation in par with other communities that are involved at $2 per resident. And secondly is a contract that we have with Northeast Youth and Family Services for a shared mental health caseworker. So that's also incorporated, and this is just to formalize. I'm not saying a whole lot about it. You are very familiar with our work with them, and they do great work, but we're looking for some formal authorization to execute those agreements.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, Madam Mayor, I'll move approval. We do this all at once? There's just one resolution, right? I'll move approval of the resolution.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just from an update perspective, some more change on that board, in that organization. We're in a new search again for an executive director. So, and the executive director that's leaving had started to do some, I think, soul searching on the mission and what we're doing at Northeast Youth and Family Services. Are we doing too much? And so that process was just started. I kind of like that process. I think it's necessary. So when we get a new leader, we'll continue that, I think. And so that's just some background. But,
Thank you.
But our money is well spent
it is.
on both these ideas. The discussion of mental health and policing, and we were a little bit ahead, not too far ahead, but we were a little bit ahead on this, and I think it is the future. And I think personally that eventually we go deeper into that as a city. We share a person with other cities. We don't get a ton of time with that person in our city. I think as we look to the future, that would be a way I would support that.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 9B, resolution authorizing city manager to execute a contract with Central Square Technologies for records management services. Ms. Heinecker.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, the memo had quite a bit of detail. I mean, in summary, what we're looking at doing is we're going to be changing vendors, so to speak, for our record management system within the police department. There is an upfront cost associated with it, but the ongoing service and maintenance costs are less annually. So after 3 years, you've sort of made back what you invested in relative to what we're paying now annually for that service. And it's a more robust records management system. As council knows, after we went to the county for dispatch services, we had some different agreements, some with Roseville and some with LETG for all of those services, and now we're just working together with the county as the whole system is being upgraded. So this is just to authorize staff to move forward with this contract and execute it accordingly.
Thank you.
That was not very much information, but.
Move to approve, Madam Mayor.
Moving to approve the Madam Mayor?
No.
Was there a comment there?
There was a "the" in there too. I was mumbler.
All right, I need a second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I will recess. It's nine.
One more item.
Oh,
be so
9C. I
quick.
forgot about 9C. Oh, I got to do that. Okay.
Yes.
Approval of the 2022 position classification and compensation plan.
And again, this,
Heinecker, it's all
thank you,
yours.
Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's an annual approval process that the council goes through in looking at the city's position and classification compensation plan, and we're recommending that the salary table be adjusted by 3% effective January 1st, 2022, with an additional 1% increase in July 1st, 2022, and that's aligned with the agreements we made with our bargaining units already for 2022, so it's all consistent. There's a lot of background on that position and classification and compensation plan included in the memorandum. I just will point out that, as council knows, we are undergoing a new salary study. I think it kicks off tomorrow, actually. Rick Juba, as the assistant, is going to be leading that process and taking the city through that process to look at that whole plan itself. So you'll be looking at this again next year in new form. So with that, I would recommend approval of the attached resolution.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now at 9:02, I will recess the meeting for the purposes of the HRA taking.
All right, I will call the HRA into session at 9:02. The clerk will note roll.
All will be noted.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the approval for the January 12th, 2021 HRA minutes. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion has passed. The next item is a resolution not waiving monetary limits on municipal tort liability established by Minnesota Statutes 466.04 for Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Who is going to take that?
I can take that.
Sorry. It's the one we do every year now.
Yes. So with this, we're doing the application for our 2022 insurance policy renewal, and this is part of the application process. So if we waive the statute monetary limits, then it opens up anybody who files a claim against the HRA to be able to receive more money up to that limit. If we were to not waive them, then we would just stay with the statutory limit. So I recommend staying with the statutory limit.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we would need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. At that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Councilmember, or Member Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to commend you, since this is the last time that you will wield the gavel. I want to just congratulate you on a full year of inaction. And meritorious service. Your compensation is incredibly generous at 0, but I think we should give you a 1,000% raise as a bonus. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. All right, we had a motion to adjourn, correct? Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We will be adjourned at 9:05.
Very, very good. All right, we're back in session just in time for the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Nothing under discussion. Next would be communications from the city manager.
I just have two quick things. One is that I just want to comment that we all seem tired and it's 9:05 only. I just thank goodness these meetings don't go till midnight like they do for some
Oh,
councils.
some councils go to later than that.
Oh, my goodness. Anyhow, but I was asked to remind council that at the first meeting in January, there will be an email out, I presume, right, we'll be coming 15 minutes early for the group photo, so that's something just to keep in mind as you schedule your first meeting of the year next year. And I have nothing more to add other than it's been my absolute and distinct pleasure to serve you all. Wow, just like so much. Everybody. That's the last thing I'm saying as city manager.
Well, it's been our distinct pleasure to have you as our city manager, believe me. It's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And Mr. Gilchrist, thank you so much for all your advice and guidance. It's much appreciated, believe me. It's nice to have him sitting next to you. It's really nice, but I always felt protected between the two of them. Yeah. But no, it's just, it's been an amazing run. And we've had I think we've had our differences, but nobody's ever stomped out of a meeting mad. Nobody ever left here upset when things didn't go your way, and they didn't always go our way. And I think that speaks.
Oh, maybe on public meetings.
Well, yeah.
We don't need to have the whole truth.
It's good that you're well behaved in public. This is good. So that's important.
Not either.
But Ellen, I just want to wish you all good things. I mean, it's an amazing time for you, and amazing things will happen, and it's all good. And staff, you rock. You guys rock, you know. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. But Mr. Bean and I will be back in January for 10 minutes or so, right? You know, so you aren't rid of us yet, right?
Well, it's been very nice work.